Okay, we're going to get started here for the second part of our agenda. We have a number of very fine speakers, and we'll go down the list. But first, I want to start with our own Dow Constantine, our county executive, who will make a very special introduction.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Wally, for hosting again this year. Wally, your unflagging commitment and generous support for our partnership to recover Kokanee year in and year out is really an inspiration to us all. And I want to thank you, Mayor Vance, for your warm welcome and for your city's work to protect Ebright Creek and other creeks that are essential to preventing extinction of the Kokanee. It is a pleasure and an honor to be joined today by Interior Secretary Sally Jewell. You know, 5 years ago this week, King County had the chance to honor Sally, then the CEO and president of REI, little outdoor co-op on Capitol Hill there, with a Green Globe Award for leading REI's environmental awareness and education efforts. She has carried that passion and commitment forward as the leader of our nation's our nation's protector of the great outdoors. She has been, of course, a point of pride for those of us here in the Pacific Northwest. And she is, in fact, one of our own because I believe she is the only Interior Secretary, perhaps the only Cabinet Secretary ever, to scale the Washington Monument on the outside. I want to thank Secretary Jewell for the tremendous support of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for this effort and for joining us today in our celebration of the little red fish. Let's give Secretary Jewell a big welcome.
It's all right. Thank you, Dow. Thank you, Mayor Vance. I can't tell you how happy I am to be home. And to be out here with Ebright Creek and Lake Sammamish and with all of you, it just doesn't get any better than this. So thank you for everything you've done to take care of this beautiful landscape. And Wally, thanks for opening your home to these little small fry. May more than 2% make it out to the other end to spawn. We know the odds are low, but it doesn't take very many of them to bring back a species. So thank you, Wally. Thank you, my colleagues in the Fish and Wildlife Service. For those of you with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, could you just raise your hands? Let's give these guys a round of applause. You know, I've just been 1 year in this job, and people say, you know, well, what's it like? Of course, it's like, well, where do you start? But one of the things I like to say is just that it was so obvious from when I got there is how hard and dedicated our federal employees are, how hard they work, how dedicated they are to their jobs and their mission. And so the crew that you see up here that just raised their hands either came up from Lacey, Washington or Portland, Oregon. They are part of the 70,000 employees that make up the Department of the Interior, and I just couldn't ask for a finer group of colleagues who continue to do what they do every day, even though they've basically been without raises for 5 years, been without a budget until 2014, but still soldier on. So thank you to all of you and other federal employees and public servants that are here. I know that this doesn't happen without great partnerships. So the Lake Sammamish Kokanee Work Group, now been around for a number of years. Congratulations on bringing this fish back, this freshwater salmon to this area. You know, when a fish doesn't need to be listed as threatened or endangered because communities get together and bring these species back, that is winning. And that is very, very powerful and a great model for what can happen around the rest of the country. So you can bet I'll be telling your story when I leave here and go back to Washington, D.C. I also want to say that things like this don't happen without local elected officials. So Bellevue, Issaquah, Redmond, Sammamish, these wonderful cities that make up the east side and are at the gateway to the Cascade Mountains, you're doing a great job of turning your face to your ecosystems and really caring for them and doing one of the most important things, which is engaging the next generation. So I thank the kids from Campbell Hill who are releasing the fish, and they were talking to me about the coho they've been raising in their school classroom as well. They're out beyond there learning more about the great outdoors, but could we give a big round of applause to the kids from Campbell Hill? Hey guys. The press release for this event said Campbell Hills, and I said, no, it's Campbell Hill, because I went to Bryn Mawr, which is just down the street. And we all ended up going to the same middle school, which is Dimmitt Middle School in Renton, so that's where I grew up. It's also in King County. And so Dow, a proud member of King County for me for many, many years. Over 50, but I won't say how many.
Keep your voter registration.
I do. I keep my voter registration here. Absolutely. So it's an interesting time to be at the Department of the Interior. It's a time when we have constrained resources, as I talked about. We're operating at a time of climate change where we see it in our landscapes everywhere we go, including here. We see it in droughts, we see it in too much rain, we see it in storms, in floods, in coastal erosion, in changing water temperatures and lower snowpacks, you know all that. We also see a changing demographic in our country and a lot fewer young people in our work than what we need. So part of what you have done out here is not just bring back the kokanee, but educate a whole lot of young people about what a kokanee salmon is and why it's important, and what was in this ecosystem when the Snoqualmie people were roaming these grounds before all of the settlers came here, and what we have an opportunity to do when we work together with young people to bring back species. And I just have to say that if we don't connect our young people to nature, we won't have young people that in a time of constrained resources, when they become voters, will care about these ecosystems, because there will never be enough money to go around for education, for social services, for defense, and for other things. So we need our young people to know. We need our young people to care, and that's what you're doing today, so thank you. One of our big commitments in the Department of the Interior, and I see some friends from Earth Corps here, is engaging young people in playing, in learning, and we've just seen that over here, but also in serving and in working on our public lands. So we're doing some little private philanthropy fundraising to support efforts and organizations like Earth Corps that's here today to work on public lands to get a whole new generation of young people volunteering and serving on public lands. And it will make a difference in a place like this for the future, so that the next generation of Wale Pereiras who have beautiful places like this where they care about taking out culverts and putting in fish streams will know that that opportunity exists, because as a young person they had a chance to do that. So it is a privilege to serve this President of the United States who cares very deeply about these issues and has asked me not only to support everything that we can do to make this planet better from a climate change standpoint, but also to engage the next generation, and especially these young people that are growing up more disconnected from nature than ever before. So we work in the Department of Interior for a president that gets it. We work for a community of people like yourself that get it. We can tell the story of what's happening here in Sammamish and in the whole Mountains to Sound Greenway to places around the country, so that they can learn the lessons from everything you're doing. So thank you for being the great stewards of this wonderful resource that you are, and I just can't thank you enough for welcoming me today, giving me a chance to release a few fish. And I have to say the first fish I released was Siskalista, named for the tribal chairwoman's grandmother. So thank you for giving me that fish name on the way out. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. You know, I do want to thank you again for our partnership with the Fish and Wildlife Service. It's connecting our urban areas and our suburban communities, and you can see that here today. It connects our county's youth to nature. It advances the stewardship of this kokanee and the lake and the whole watershed. And today marks the 5th consecutive year of giving the Sammamish kokanee population a boost through the hatchery program. I remember being part of the event in 2010, just a stone's throw from here in the forest, and we celebrated the first releases of the Kokanee fry into this stream, and it is so great to be here knowing that some of those young kokanee have returned to this creek as spawning adults. King County, Madam Secretary, is committed to moving this effort forward, and we are moving forward on projects to improve the culverts beyond Wally's property here. The culverts in Ebright Creek and Zacuse Creek under the East Lake Sammamish Trail so that the Kokanee migration isn't hindered. We expect these projects to be completed by the summer of 2016 in time to aid the returning adult fish from this year's release. And we are working in partnership with the City of Sammamish to improve culverts and habitat upstream from the trail project so we maximize the benefits of these shared investments. We can't overlook the challenges ahead. This year's return of adult kokanee, while better than the prior year's returns, is just barely enough to avoid extinction of this unique fish. And we know from our recent King County study that was funded by U.S. Fish and Wildlife that climate change could and almost certainly will reduce the amount of habitat in the lake that's available for these fish. So we know funding is scarce. That places a premium on these strong partnerships. And the model that the Secretary described is the model that we adopt in this and all the rest of our work now. It's not just the federal government or the state government or our county and city governments. It is all of us working collectively toward a shared goal. Collective impact is what's going to deliver us in the future and is going to save these fish. And so there's cause for optimism. Our team is strong. Our new Urban Wildlife Refuge partnership has momentum. We're engaging these young people from the Sammamish watershed and giving them the chance to be the next generation of leaders. And we're embracing an increasingly economically and culturally diverse community and bringing them into this shared passion for saving our environment. We're implementing habitat projects that support the kokanee. In fact, 7 of the 11 near-term projects that we identified back in 2010 when we started this have already been accomplished or are well on their way to being accomplished, and that's something of which we can all be proud. And Wally's culvert replacement that restored easy access to high-quality fish habitat was one very spectacular one of those projects. So I'm proud to stand with our partners who are residents in cities and tribes and non-governmental organizations to achieve the goal of recovered kokanee population. I want to thank everybody here, and many of you have been here year after year, for everything you do. And someday we'll be able to look back on the work we did here and say, well done, we succeeded. Thank you so very much. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a number of speakers on our list, and I do want to get to all of them. The first one actually doesn't know it yet, but he received another honor today, and Secretary Jewell knows this. I named my fish Fred. So our first speaker is Mayor Fred Butler from Issaquah.
Thank you, Tom. Well, what a beautiful day, a fantastic opportunity and a day of celebration. We are, as you heard the Secretary say, very fortunate to live in a region that places such importance on the survival of this unique species, those little red fish. The City of Issaquah is a longtime member of the Kokanee Work Group, an excellent example of government agencies and their partners working together for a common goal to help restore a sustaining population of Lake Sammamish kokanee. The restoration would not be possible without the hard work of the work group members and of the Issaquah Salmon Hatchery, where the kokanee were spawned and reared. At the City of Issaquah, we are proud of our role in the Kokanee Work Group and our long history of protecting and restoring the stream corridors necessary for the survival of kokanee and other salmon species. We're currently working to implement major restoration projects on Lewis Creek, an important kokanee stream, and the Confluence Area Park in downtown Issaquah. Both of these projects were identified as key projects for Kokanee restoration. We recently cooperated with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife to remove a decades-old dam on Issaquah Creek that prevented kokanee and other salmon from reaching upstream spawning habitat. We have excellent partners through the Kokanee Work Group, including Friends of the Issaquah Salmon Hatchery, which educates learners of all ages about the kokanee life cycle. Although it was unimaginable just a few short years ago, thousands of kokanees returned to local streams last fall to spawn and continue their life cycle. Together, we are truly making a difference in saving these little red fish from extinction. Thank you.
Next, we have Councilmember John Stokes from the great city of Bellevue. John.
Well, I'm very pleased to be here. This is, I hate to admit, and no excuses, my first fish fry release. And it's good to see the enthusiasm and the excitement for this event. And I'll be coming back every year from now on. And I really commend the commitment of the citizen volunteers. That's what makes it really work. And I know a lot of you have been working for years for Kokanee and donating your time for more than a decade or more. Bellevue participated in the technical Kokanee investigations with the old Sammamish Forum in the 1990s prior to the formation of the current Kokanee Work Group. And over the years, Bellevue has helped the Lewis Creek core spawning area by protecting the full upper Lewis Creek riparian area and by operating the Lakemont water quality and detention facility. We continue to work on restoring the headwater wetlands at Lewis Creek Interpretive Center in what used to be a horse boarding pasture. And if you haven't seen that park, it can show again like this setting here what can be done when you get together and take an area that has been misused and or neglected and or just been and make it something really important for the community, for people, and for the fish. Bellevue is also currently investigating kokanee habitat in Vasa Creek as part of a basin study, and perhaps one day, if we work more on this, we can have this event in Bellevue. Wouldn't that be cool? Conrad Lee and I are very interested in and taking a look at this, and I am personally committed, particularly after today, to seeing that Bellevue can do more to support this kokanee effort. And we will work on this and be a strong partner. And the other thing that I'm very passionate about, and I'm glad this reinforces, is that as Bellevue becomes more of an urban city, we have to maintain our connections with Sammamish and with rural areas and with smaller cities around us, because it's all connected, and we don't need to forget that. And the kokanee is something we can rally around, and we have a very mutual interest in. So, Conrad, Wright, we're going to be working on this and see what we can do more. I really look forward to working with you and over this time learning more about these little red fish, and I'm very pleased to be here today, and thanks for inviting me.
Next, we have the Honorable Carolyn Lubino, Snoqualmie Tribal Council Chair. Carolyn.
It's so wonderful to be here today. Thank you very much for opening your home to all of us. We're here today to offer our prayers and our blessings to these little kokanee fry as they begin their journey. Our people called the kokanee the little red fish, and they are an important traditional food source to the native people in this region. The reason they're so important is the little red fish come to us at a time of year when other food sources are less abundant. The little red fish made it possible for our ancestors to live here at Lake Sammamish year-round. Without them, it would have been a terrible struggle. So we view them as a great gift, and a gift that we're so honored so many people coming together to restore them back to all people. The Snoqualmie tribe has been stewards and caretakers of the fish and wildlife in this region since time immemorial, and we are pleased to continue that role as part of this recovery effort. We would like to thank our partners and numerous individuals who continue to contribute to this effort. These little redfish do not swim out to the sea. Their fate are in our hands. Their success will be a result of the choices we make now and in the future. Thank you for the continued efforts to protect the little red fish. I just want to leave you with something. The secretary had given the name of her fish to my grandmother, actually my great-grandmother. And my grandmother was pretty much self-taught. She had a few years at Tulalip at the reservation school there. But after that, she was pretty much self-taught. She read everything. Literally, she would read everything. One of the things she passed on to me, and I tell my tribal council, and they probably get tired of hearing it, but what I tell them is, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And that's what I feel about this effort. We're going to go far. We'll bring them back, and it's to all of you. Thank you.
Okay, let's welcome Bob Everett, Regional Director of the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife from the North Puget Sound region.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really a great pleasure to be here. And before I make my comments, I do want to pile on the praise and thanks to Wally Pariah back there for hosting this event. And let all of you know, last May, our director, Phil Anderson, presented Wally with the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Landowner of the Year Award in recognition for the work he's done here at Ebrights Creek and for his involvement in this whole recovery effort. And so Wally, again, and with this group, thanks for that effort. So we're proud to call Wally our friend and our partner as well. You know, Kokanee, our fish population in general, but Kokanee is a good example of this, are really very variable. And last year, you know, we celebrated the largest return that we had measured here, about 14,000 fish. They're spawning in the index creeks along Lake Sammamish. This year, there's about 500. And so, you know, that chart is kind of like a Dow Jones sort of thing. It bounces around. What we're hoping for is that upward trend and avoid the bear market. And, you know, the past 5 years, we've seen that. And so while it's not as encouraging as it was last year, that trend line still is moving in the right direction, and that's good news. I want to just mention for a brief moment what we've been doing at the hatchery. And the Department of Fish and Wildlife is involved in a lot of the aspects of the work here, but probably our primary contribution is what we do at our hatchery. And we do something that's really kind of unique for us. We are taking water from these natal creeks where the parent fish come from back to the hatchery, and those eggs are incubated in that water. The fry emerge in their natal water, and they're brought back here in that water and released in their natal creeks. And so they actually don't know that any different water than where they should have been born in had they been allowed to spawn in the gravel. And the jury's a little bit out on that yet. This is only the second year of the return of those hatchery fish that were taken in that were originally taken in the hatchery about 5 years ago, and we're going to start seeing these fish come back every year. Last year, about 10 or 15% of that large run that we saw seemed to be composed of hatchery fish, and we're hoping that significant contribution continues. But that supplementation, while it's not going to win the battle here, it's certainly going to help avoid extinction until the native fish can do the job on their own. And that's really what our objective is here too. I do want to thank the partners that helped really improve and make possible the continuation of that hatchery program. We made several important improvements last year, most particularly the upgrading of the chilling system. And as many of you know, the water that these fish are incubated in, the temperature is changed artificially a little bit. That lays down a mark on the ear bone or the otolith in the fish, which allows then the biologists later, when they recover those adults, to determine, you know, what broodstock year those fish came from and where they should have been and really kind of their life story. We're able to do that better now thanks to this new equipment. In addition, there's a new fan and venting system in the hatchery, part of the hatchery that incubates these eggs, that makes that much more efficient, easier to work in, easier for the incubation to take place. And lastly, and I don't want to think least, because it's probably the most important thing that was done was the alarm system has been improved. And in the hatchery, and those of you that maybe know a little bit about hatcheries, and I know there's a lot of docents here from the Issaquah hatchery, the great fear is that something goes haywire on the pumps or the screens or something, and the water stops flowing, and that is bad news in the hatchery. And those alarm systems are life and death of the hatchery, and we now have one dedicated to the Kokanee program that's going to make it possible to secure those that operation in the future. And that wouldn't have been done without the help of these partners. So I really want to thank, and I'm really honored to work with the partnerships that include King County, cities of Issaquah, Bellevue, Sammamish, Redmond, Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Snoqualmie tribes, among all of you other volunteers and local groups that participate as well. And before I close here, I do want to recognize the staff of the Department of Fish and Wildlife that have worked hard with the Kokanee work group, doing the work up here in the watershed and also in the hatchery. The only one that's really here easy to point to is Stuart Reinbold, who's back here. Stuart works with the hatchery group. We have some hatchery staff that are around. I'm not sure if they're in the audience here or not. But right now, tomorrow is opening day of fishing season for Ololan Lakes. And if you haven't bought your fishing license, it's not too late. We are planting fish in every lake around here. In fact, Pine Lake up here on the Sammamish Plateau is getting 18,000 fish this week. And that's where Darren Combs and some of the hatchery staff from Issaquah are probably right now, or at least they're going back and forth, taking care of that. So unfortunately, they couldn't be here today. But without them, our effort wouldn't be possible. So thank you very much for all you do, and thanks for including us in this partnership. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Bob. Next, we have Peter Herzog, who's the Assistant Director of the Washington State Parks. Peter.
Thank you. State Parks is very excited to be part of the Lake Sammamish Urban Wildlife Refuge Partnership, and it's great to see the wonderful work that the Kokanee Work Group is doing around here for the little red fish. I'd like to take a minute to describe a little bit how Lake Sammamish State Park meshes with the Urban Wildlife Refuge Initiative. With rapid urban and residential growth around many of our parks, the State Parks and Recreation Commission has really wrestled with what to do with its now urban state parks. Time has not always been so good to parks like Lake Sammamish, and about 10 years ago, Canada geese, blackberries, reed canary grass, and ever-declining budgets had brought this once thriving park to the brink. Some thought maybe we should sacrifice it and use it to generate revenue. Others thought maybe it wasn't really a state park and we should divest it to local government. A few regrettable proposals later, state parks joined with the Issaquah and Sammamish communities to figure out what to do with 6,900 feet of lakeshore, 3 salmon-bearing streams, a 320-acre wetland system, all in marginal biological condition, and a very tired recreational facility, and put it on a path towards a public purpose worthy of state financial investment and public support. What emerged was a vision for a park entirely new to the state park system, a park meant to creatively engage city dwellers and suburban communities in restoration and interpretation of a vast urban natural area as its principal purpose. That is, developing amenities that attract urban populations, using interpretation to spark interest in the natural world, and providing ways for people to participate in its restoration and its care. Since 2005, together with Mountains of Sound Greenway Trust and other partners, we've restored over 40 acres of riparian habitat, planted more than 40,000 native trees and shrubs, and engaged over 8,000 volunteers who have contributed 35,000 hours of volunteer service. More recently, community members have stepped forward to form the Friends of Lake Sammamish State Park. A great start, but there's so much potential left. About a year and a half ago, Brad Thompson called from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and has asked if state parks might possibly have an interest in an urban presence initiative they were working on to get people in the Lake Sammamish area interested in restoring and preserving habitat for endangered species. I just about jumped out of my chair. Now, I know it's probably hard to relate to excitement over a non-regulatory federal jurisdictional overlay, but to me, this is interjurisdictional nirvana. Clearly, for Lake Sammamish State Park, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Urban Refuge Initiative is a perfect complement and brings with it visibility, focus, and the potential to achieve an even grander conservation vision. With funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, State Parks is working with the other participating jurisdictions and organizations on an interpretive plan for the refuge, and we're excited to see results from this really important work. So on behalf of the Washington State Parks and Recreation Commission, we thank the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for their designation of the Urban Wildlife Refuge, and we commit our continued support and participation for this very, very promising initiative. Thanks.
Next we have Rosendo Guerrero, State President, Washington Council of Trout Unlimited. Thank you for coming.
Wow, this crowd keeps growing every year, and it's interesting. Wally, next year I think we're going to need grandstands. So I want to thank everybody for coming out today. I mean, this is a vision from 2007, a Eagle Scout project with Trout Unlimited, my Bellevue Issaquah chapter. I represent 14 chapters, soon to be 15, and Bellevue Issaquah is one of the most proudest chapters I'm here to represent. I want to thank them for the continued effort and work that they do on the little redfish, as well as other work they do with the community and involving our kids with salmon in the classroom, trout in the classroom, activities that go on every year. So if you get a chance to go onto our Washington Council or the Bellevue Issaquah chapter website, there's different events on there that are great volunteer opportunities to get your kids involved. And I think it's time that we, as parents, educate our youth, which are our seeds that we're planting. So looking at this vision that we had in 2007, a small group of volunteers logged in over 500 hours of volunteer time. The Bellevue Issaquah chapter of Trout Unlimited was committed to the restoration of the important, this unique fish. This was a team effort with King County, WDFW, Snoqualmie Tribe, USFWS, the Boy Scouts, the City of Bellevue, Issaquah, Redmond, and Sammamish, Friends of Pine Lake, and other concerned citizens to form this Kokanee group. The work on Lewis Creek, Ebright, and as of this week, Laughing Creek is possible with volunteers. And it's volunteers that make up our organization. Last year alone, Trout Unlimited logged in over 1 million hours of volunteer hours nationwide, and it's an honor to represent this group. Thank you.
Next we have Joanna Bueller, a longtime local resident and the founder of Save Lake Sammamish. Thank you.
This is a remarkable moment for me. I've worked on Save Lake Sammamish, or trying to save Lake Sammamish, for 25 years. So to see this group of people and this amount of focus and interest and concern on the Kokanee and the lake is absolutely heaven. The partnerships are amazing, the people are wonderful, and it's a very encouraging sign to see this kind of an event. However, and there's always a however with me, I'm afraid, there are a couple of things that I'd like to ask for more. One is that we're aiming not to have a permanent hatchery program, but to have a self-sustaining fishable run of these fish. In order to do that, we must get a handle on land use. Save Lake Sammamish was founded 25 years ago because I found out that there was a proposal to take a pipeline from the top of Cougar Mountain and all the way down 2 miles down the slope and into Lake Sammamish and dump untreated stormwater with all the pollutants that carries. That was the genesis of Save Lake Sammamish, because obviously if you put pollutants in and treat it as a stormwater pond, then you're going to pollute the lake. Unfortunately, 25 years later, we have even more pipelines being proposed. We're having land that was set aside because it was too fragile, land that was set aside to protect the ravines, the wetlands, and the headwater areas. Those lands are now being allowed to have pilot programs. So unfortunately, we're going backwards in some ways. I look at the shoreline master programs that are being updated around the lake, and conservation areas are being rolled back. These fish spend their entire life cycle in Lake Sammamish. If we do not protect the shorelines and give them shoreline habitat, they are not going to be able to survive as a self-sustaining run. So even though it costs money to do these restoration programs, and we've been having a lot of volunteer hours, Those are very good things, but we also need to uphold the regulations that were put in place originally to protect these fish, to protect the sensitive areas. We should not be building on steep erodible slopes, and we shouldn't be cutting down the trees in the ravines like this. So I would say thank you for everything you're doing. It's a wonderful job, but please do that bit more and enforce those regulations. Thank you.
Now we have David St. John on behalf of the Lake Sammamish Kokanee Work Group. David, there he is.
So I have the privilege of being the final speaker. And my son Ben is here joining me and giving me moral support as I talk. My other son Mac is out there somewhere eating cookies or something. So I do want to thank you all for coming today. This is the one moment in the year that we have the opportunity to see each other and have more than a 2-hour timed agenda to relate to each other and talk about what we're doing and really to celebrate what we're doing. So this event, you know, I remember when we had the idea 6 years ago and Hans and I were sitting around saying, you know, what could we do? We never envisioned anything like this. This celebration is really a key moment in our annual cycle of work to celebrate what we've been doing and to highlight the progress and to identify where we need to make more progress and what's coming up for us. So thank you all for coming and participating today. It's an important day for us, and we love celebrating with more and more people every year. So thanks again for doing that. So a couple things that I have to do. We have to do some kudos here, and this is like a thank you-a-thon, I know, but I'll keep it going. For the supplementation program that provided the fry for today, 3 main parties. U.S. Fish provides most of the funding for that work, so thank you to U.S. Fish for the funding, and King County and WDFW are the ones that implement the work on the ground. So those 3 entities are really the ones that shepherd that supplementation program. So thank you to those agencies for that work that you do. And you've done so well for 5 years. There are a lot of risks and unknowns in hatchery programs. They do a great job every year of dealing with things that come up that you don't always anticipate, and they've done a great job with that again. I need to have some time to do some thanks for this event. You know, this event has grown. I remember that first year that Dow referenced, we were up in the forest there, and there were probably a third as many people there that compared to today. So the event is getting more complicated in really good ways, we think. So we need more folks stepping up to help us to do this every year. Wally Pereira, again, giving us a place to do this. We've done this event in 2 places, here and on Laughing Jacobs Creek, and Wally's done it 3 times. So he prevails in the number of times he's hosting. So he's beating the state by 1. So thanks, Wally, again, for hosting. Super. City of Sammamish provided the refreshments today. So thank you to the City of Sammamish for doing that. Jeff Reinhardtson from Hexcel Corporation. Hexcel, Jeff, great to meet you. Thanks. They provided the funding for the bus that brought the Campbell Hill students today. Thank you for that. Snoqualmie Tribe, again this year for the songs and the blessing and the drumming. Thank you for doing that. King County for organizing the event, and in particular Jane Lamsdorf-Bucher and Hans Burge. I'm not sure where you folks are. Jane stepped in this year. This is the first time she's been part of this event, and she just did a bang-up job. Hans has done his usual great work supporting the event. So thank you to you both for everything that you did, putting the pieces together for this. Friends of Issaquah Salmon Hatchery and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Dan Spencer and Selena Steiger. I'm not sure if you're here. They're the folks that put together the education event. It's something that we've wanted to do for a long time. We've been able to do it 2 years in a row, largely because Dan and Selena just do a killer job arranging all that, organizing with the schools and all that work. So Dan and Selena and your organizations, thank you for your work. Thank you to Campbell Hill and Blackwell Elementary Schools for participating. Campbell Hill's here today. We did a similar, smaller event yesterday with the folks from Blackwell Elementary in Sammamish. So thanks to those schools for participating. It's a great part of our event. Volunteers, a lot of volunteers today, and we hope that you didn't just volunteer, that you actually got to enjoy the event some. Sammamish Kiwanis, Trout Unlimited, and Friends of Issaquah Salmon Hatchery, and there are probably others that I'm not capturing there. So thanks to the volunteers today. Very important for you for the role that you play. Tom Franklin and his crew for Marshall Contracting. Tom, I think, well, doesn't Tom live here at this point? You know, Tom is great. Tom, we say, Tom, can we do this? And he says, yes, we'll figure out how to do it in this event. So Tom and his folks have been great. They do a great job every year when we're here. AmeriCorps folks helped with the education event and another volunteer capacity there for AmeriCorps, and they were here last year. I think they actually, no, that was Earth Corps that did the planting over there. Lots of corps. AmeriCorps helped with the education event today, volunteered for that. So you folks, I've seen your T-shirts around. And last but certainly not least, Eileen Stahl. Eileen, where are you? I saw her here. Eileen is a longtime community activist with Joanna and folks like Erica Tiliakos who live in the community, are out there advocating and agitating all the time for Kokanee, going back a long time. And so thank you, Eileen, for all that work. You and Erica couldn't make it today, for doing that. But in particular, the cookies, the Kokanee cookies, killed it again. People love those. I mean, I think that's why we get more people every year, because they know about the Kokanee cookies. So that's my list of thank yous. I know I've forgotten somebody, and I apologize for that. Last year we had this aha moment that we had forgotten to thank, three folks who did important things for us during the year. It's important for us, as we do our work, to not save the thank yous for this day. Things happen all year long that are important to Kokanee and our work. We see a lot of us here at this event. It's important to thank folks, but when you see folks doing things every day over the course of the year that are helpful to Kokanee, make sure that you thank them then, and don't just save it up for today, because we can't possibly remember everything that folks are doing. So thanks for everybody that's been recognized today, and thanks for everybody that we failed to recognize today for all that you're doing. I do want to highlight a few things. I know I'm running a little bit long, that happened this year that were examples of good work. The fun run that Bellevue Issaquah Trout Unlimited now do every year, Mark Taylor at the Issaquah, at Sammamish State Park. They've done it twice. They'll do it again for the third year this year. Great fundraiser for us. Bob Everett mentioned the work at the hatchery that the city of Sammamish and Issaquah and the KWG funded this year. We're happy to have that capacity improvement at the hatchery for this program. We've mentioned the removal of the barrier on Issaquah Creek that the city of Issaquah was a primary mover on with state and federal money, and WDFW's helped with that as well. We've got King County's work under the East Lake Sammamish Trail to improve the passage on those barriers. This year we had more fish return to Tibbetts Creek than any other creek, which is amazing. Tibbetts Creek is not a customary producer of Kokanee. We don't see many fish there at all in any year, but that creek had more fish back this year than Ebright and Laughing Jacobs and Lewis, which we hope is a good sign that the fish are starting to spread out, and they're going to be in more creeks and spawning in more places, which is important for us. And last thing here, I do want to highlight a few of the opportunities going forward. We do have this project called the Kokanee Blueprint, which is the next generation of habitat projects that we need to fund and implement on our creeks. We started with that list of 11 that Dow referenced. We've gotten over halfway done with those projects. Our next generation is going to be identified in the next couple months. We need to move those projects forward. We are working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and our partners to do the interpretive plan for the Urban Wildlife Refuge Partnership. That's coming out in a few months. We have to keep working on our technical program for a couple of reasons. We need to know more about what these fish are doing and the habitats that they need to survive in the streams and in the lake. But also, if you look at our timeline, I do recommend that you look at this timeline. We are still seriously intending to have that fishery opportunity open in that 2021-2025 timeframe. The only way we're going to do that is if we understand better what's going on with this population and when we can actually have a sustainable fishery in that lake. So that means we got to know about their habitat, we got to know about the fish. And we're not doing enough today to build that basis of decision making, so when we can really reasonably decide when a fishery can happen on the lake. So we've got a lot of work to do there. I'm going to stop there. Again, I'll say thanks to everybody for coming today. Very important that we have folks showing up and supporting our work and sharing with each other your perspective on how we're doing and the more that we can do. So thank you for that. I do want to do one thing here. We have this sign here that we'd like folks to sign. We have Sharpies. So folks that are here, we want to capture the moment and have you sign this poster here. My Vanna, there's the Sharpie. So come up afterwards and sign the poster. If we run out of space, we'll find something else to sign, and we'll keep that as a record of who was here today. Jane, am I missing anything? Jane, you're here somewhere. We good? Okay, we're good. So thanks again, everybody.
Thank you all for coming. There's still those cookies are over there that Eileen made, and we've still got some time. The nice thing about this is seeing so many old friends and new friends, so enjoy the afternoon. Thank you.